where literacy evolves with technology and language proficiency. This is the Multiliterate Mind Podcast with Dr. Liza Trejo and Marnina Falk-Coleman.
Hello, and welcome to the Multiliterate Mind. I'm Dr. Liza Trejo, and I'm joined by my colleague, Marnina Falk-Coleman.
Hi, Liza.
Hi, Marnina. So good to be back together today.
Yes, indeed.
So together we are exploring how language proficiency, multiliteracy, and human connection are evolving in an AI-driven world. We are so excited to welcome our guest today, Dr. Maylén R.R. Sullivan.
Welcome to the podcast, Maylén. We're so excited to have you join us.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful to have you. And before we dive into the content of this episode, I want us to give our listeners a bit of background about you. So I'm going to kick that off to Liza.
Yes, so originally from Cuba, Dr. Maylén R.R. Sullivan serves as the 2026 California Language Teacher of the Year. And I know, quite an impressive accomplishment, Dr. Sullivan.
Thank you.
And a District World Language Teacher and ToSA. She combines 15 years of classroom experience with a PhD in leadership studies to shape K-12 language vision and facilitate professional development. Dr. Sullivan's instruction empowers students to bridge cultural gaps, engage in their communities, and master the skills necessary to earn the Seal of Biliteracy.
Wow, what an accomplished bio. I love hearing about all the great work you've been doing. We know a little bit from the bio, but I'd love to go deeper into your story a little bit. So what drew you to language teaching? How have your own linguistic and cultural experiences shaped your approach? And what's your journey been like?
Thank you so much. Yeah, happy to be here. And thanks for having me. So a little bit of my background. I'm actually a Cuban immigrant. So I was born in Cuba and lived there for the first 10 years of my life. Obviously only spoke Spanish. That's, what you speak in Cuba.
Mhm.
And then when I moved to the US, like at the beginning of my 5th grade year, that's when I was exposed to the English language. And obviously I had to master the English language. So through that first year, I found myself, kind of integrating into the culture, learning the language. I watched a lot of TV, Family Matters, Full House. This was back in the mid-90s.
It was a good era. It's a good era of television.
Yeah, a lot of TV and, with great supportive home atmosphere and a lot of support from teachers and everybody cheering me on along the way. I was able to acquire English. And my dream was always to become a teacher. But that dream kind of like shifted. I had like different ideas about what kind of teacher I wanted to be throughout my life. So when I was in high school, I was actually obsessed with math. So I knew I was going to be a math teacher. That was what I knew. And then, I go to college. It didn't turn out the way that I had envisioned it for myself. But I think probably near the end of my freshman year in college, beginning of my sophomore year, I made the decision to switch my major from math to comparative literature. You just can't
that's a switch.
find two different things, right? With that major, I had to have a third language. That was kind of part of the requirements. So I had always loved the French because I actually took 8th grade. I took 1 year of French as a middle schooler down in Miami. And so I was like, you know what? Why don't I just start French again? I really enjoyed it. I really loved it. So let's do that. So I took French and, it was amazing. I had the opportunity to travel, go to Paris,
Wow.
And then,
Paris is incredible.
right?
That will turn anyone onto a language. I tell you, Paris is amazing.
Yes.
Right. So I did my 6-month study abroad there one spring. And then right after college, I had this sense of like, yes, I want to be a teacher, but I want to experience the world. I want to have adventure first before I end up doing all that, right? So I went to the Peace Corps. So my first job out of college was as a Peace Corps volunteer in Mauritania. And I was working in the field of education, but it was very specialized. It was girls' education and empowerment.
Oh,
So,
cool.
I ran an after school kind of mentoring and tutoring center for young girls. And I did that. And when I was there too, the Peace Corps has incredible language training. So they actually trained me in Mauritanian Arabic, which is Hassaniya.
Wow.
So
Mhm.
I forgot it all already, but I did become conversational in that dialect when I was there. And so when I came back, it was just kind of like a natural step. Okay, I have this background in literature. I've always wanted to be a teacher. I'm going to try to pursue teaching in the language field. And I mean, I didn't have a teaching credential or anything. So the first thing I did is I got a job at a private school. So I started.
That's what I did too. That was my that's what happened to me too.
Yeah, and we when the my boss who hired me, great guy, he knew it was temporary because he knew eventually I would go to get my master's and go to the teaching credential zone. That was I was in DC at the
Mhm.
time. And then after 2 years there, I moved to California to get my master's, and the rest is history.
So were you
Wow.
teaching French or Spanish or both?
At the private school, I was teaching French, Spanish, and math.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you still fulfilled that dream as a math teacher.
Yes, I still got my math teaching credential, so I have all three. So
Wow. Okay.
I'll tell.
It's so interesting how life just took you to where you were meant to be
Yeah,
also.
absolutely.
And so I was wondering, with all of that, I hear kind of this passion for language and this passion for really experiencing culture as a language learner. How did that bring you to your work around, I think specifically, you center proficiency, language mastery, and really preparing students for the Seal of Biliteracy? So, in that journey to becoming both a language teacher and also to this focus, why and how did that become kind of your path and your priority as a teacher? And what does the seal do for you beyond, or for your students beyond just a credential that they earn? Kind of what made that so important to you?
Yes, a couple questions in that question. So I'll
Yeah.
start with the first one about proficiency. I think when I first started teaching, I was teaching after getting my credential. I was following like a textbook, and I was
Mhm.
doing like a very grammar-based approach.
Mhm.
And I remember I taught like, a set of kids in Spanish 1, and then I had them all in Spanish 2 the next year. And I swear to you, only one kid actually could speak in the language. And I was so sad. I was like,
Mhm.
wow, this is really bad. Like, what's going on here? Why don't they remember anything? And at the
Mhm.
time, I hadn't really done that deep reflection to think about why is it that like 99% of my class was actually unsuccessful from level 1 to level 2. And then a few years later, I was hired on as a French teacher at a different school. I moved to San Diego. And in that context, I had the opportunity to revisit and think about my own language learning experiences and how to teach my students in a way that they could actually pick up the language sort of more naturally versus this kind of drill and kill, which could be helpful to some. There are some
Mhm.
students who learn really well in that way. Not everyone, but there are some students that it could be helpful to. And what I realized was that the way that I learned English was not because, every week I had to practice 20 words and memorize the 20 words. I learned English from reading and watching TV.
Mhm.
And I was very systematic for myself. I started off, well, I don't understand, so I'm going to get an easier book. I'm going to get a children's book and see if I understand. And I kept leveling myself up. So by the end of fifth grade, I was reading Babysitter's Club.
I loved that book.
I
Oh my
did
gosh, that was
too.
my
So good,
There's
right?
so many Babysitters Club books.
And then on the watching TV side, like I would watch hours and hours of TV in English, and I would watch it with the English subtitles. Because
Mhm.
as you guys know, English pronunciation is messed up, you guys. It's messed up. It's not like Spanish, where like what you
We
see
didn't
is
make
what
it
you
up,
get.
I promise.
I know,
And
I
this is
know.
coming from a French teacher where half the letters and the words are
I
not
know. French is
pronounced.
like ignore half the word and then you're good, right?
Yes.
So I would put the closed captioning subtitles because I noticed that it would help me because I could see
Mm.
the words, I could listen to the words, and I could make those connections, and I could
Mhm.
see how words were spelled. And I was that child who cared about spelling. I was me,
Uh-huh.
like, so reflecting on that experience, reflecting on the incredible French professors that I had in college and how they used input to slowly, bring me up. And obviously, I had a month-long immersion in the summer, and then I had my 6 months over there. So it kind of clicked that even though like it kind of clicked like this is how I learned. I didn't learn because I did drills. I didn't learn because I sat there and beat myself with words over my head with flashcards. Although, like I'm not bashing it. It could be helpful to a lot of people. I'm not saying don't do it, right? So when that piece clicked, then I started teaching more in that way. And immediately I saw the engagement going up. I saw my students actually acquiring the French language. I saw students that I had them for 2 years and they would pass the AP test at the end of year two.
Wow,
So,
that's
of
amazing.
course, a little asterisk, they were Spanish speakers, most of them. So, if you know Spanish, you basically know French. You just don't know that you know French. So, still, to pass the AP test after 2 years, I think is still pretty great accomplishment. And after that, I kind of like bumbled about in that way. And then I found the stamp test.
Mm.
That's when it kind of all connected. So,
Okay.
the way that you are being assessed, you have to show what you know.
Mhm.
It's not like a
Interesting.
fill in the blank where it's one word. And if you misspell one letter in that word, it's wrong. It's more like you have to show what you know. And then so it all kind of aligned and clicked together for me
Can you say
because,
a little more about that? Because that's very interesting to us for a lot of
yeah,
people.
yeah, I'm sure it is, right? Yeah. So when I started teaching more in an acquisition lens, with more input and authentic materials made comprehensible, and let's look at a task that you can do with this, a task that you can do to attack this authentic material, but that is appropriate to your level where you are right now,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
I still didn't feel like I knew much about how to actually measure students going up in proficiency. It was more like pray that they pass the AP test. And then, okay, they passed. Amazing. But it was like I didn't really know what was going on there, right?
Mhm.
And so to be able to experience an exam, because I also took the stamp test, I took it myself in French
Mm.
and in Spanish, because luckily we were offered that opportunity
Mhm.
just to see our level. So I took it myself. I started working with the stamp test when we adopted it here in our district, Coronado. And it just it was like a through line connecting the instruction that I knew and I believed in with more of those assessment practices to then prepare them to be successful in the exam. So now I know I don't have to pray or wonder anymore whether a student is going to pass the AP test because prior to that, they have had multiple opportunities to show what they know via the stamp test. And, we know that achievement tests show you something, they don't
Mhm.
necessarily show you proficiency. Like grammar based tests, paper and pencil tests, multiple choice tests, whether you spelled the word right, conjugated the word right, or their value in these tests, but they don't show you the full picture. They show
Mhm.
you a small part of what it means to acquire language, a small process along the way.
So I love how you noted that like you're really looking to shift to can students show what they know and what they can do with the language? Giving the stamp, can you talk a little bit about what that looks like in the day to day or leading up to that? How are you doing checkpoints for your students? How are you, with that input, what are you doing? How are you assessing almost formative assessments, maybe you could talk about along the way? Because I just heard you say that you no longer have to cross your fingers and like hope that they pass the AP. You already know that they're getting there. How do you know? How do you check that along the way?
Yeah, so I mean, in just basic lesson planning on a daily basis, ensuring that I have multiple opportunities for students to discuss and answer prompts off the cuff. Yes, there are supports, especially in the lower levels. You will have sentence starters, you will have lists of vocabulary to support, but it needs to be done off the cuff. Or, like we do regular journal entries. So
Mhm.
students get a chance to process their thoughts and write out what they're saying. Then they talk to their peers, but at some point I ask them to close their journals, stop reading off your journal, and now go talk to somebody from memory, what you actually know and can do.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
you can apply that across anything. If you're doing like an input to output activity where you've read this article, you have this essential question that you have to answer. Now everybody talk about it. And maybe after you talk, maybe now you write an exit ticket. So you just kind of like flow through all the modes of communication throughout your lesson. And then in more formal ways, which is still formative, but like more formal assessment ways. My colleague Alexandra and I, we in the French department here at Coronado, we came up with what we call proficiency checks.
Mhm.
And maybe we didn't make this up, but we feel like we made it up. And so essentially, what
You
we
made it your
do
own.
is,
Mhm.
yeah, what we do is because our classes only last one semester, we're under a 4x4 schedule. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But in the 4x4 schedule, because the class, like French one, will only last one semester, we'll take 2 points in the middle of the semester, like maybe 1 month in and maybe like 2.5 months in. And we will give the students a writing and a speaking prompt that is similar in format and nature to what they might see on the stamp. Not the exact same, but similar. Very open-ended, low floor, high ceiling, so that students have plenty of opportunities to show us what they know. And we can also see what they don't yet are able to do, what they're not yet able to do with that. So we give this proficiency check about twice a semester or maybe once, depending on the class. And with this proficiency check, we grade it using the stamp rubric. So we
Love
took the
that idea.
stamp rubric and we simplified it. We took out a lot just because we want to make it easy for us to interpret and for the kids. And we grade it and we tell them, hey, you got a 3 on your speaking. You're on your way to a 4 by the real stamp. This is what you can do. And we have the students set goals and so on. So they get one of each, one writing and one speaking. And just like in the stamp, we give them, it's not necessarily timed, but we give them 15 minutes for each. So
Mhm.
you've got this writing, take 15 minutes to write as much as you can, and then speaking, take 15 minutes to think and then record. And that's it.
And how do your
So
students respond to that, if I might ask? How have they responded to that?
I think really well because I think it gives them information and also the parents. It gives the parents information of, hey, we're halfway to the term. This is what's
Mhm.
happening with your child. This is what they can do to go up to the next level. So
Mhm.
it's sort of, I feel like it's empowering. It gives them real information versus you got 16 out of 65 correct. What does
Yeah.
that tell you? That
Mhm.
tells you you suck. Nothing else. But this gives information about like this is your proficiency level and how it's evolving. But remember, it's only based on one prompt. So it's not necessarily like super accurate, but it's just a check to see where they are. So we do that in a formal manner.
Mm, great
And I bet
idea.
that's also motivating for them because they're seeing kind of, oh my goodness, look at all I can do with the language. Look where
Mhm.
I am able to succeed and I have a roadmap of where to go next. It's, if we get 16 out of 65 on a unit test, that just tells me what I know about the unit I learned, but not necessarily the language or my growth in communication. I love that.
Yeah, and just to add one final little thing about that, let's in the case, for example, where we do the two proficiency checks, we can have one-on-one quick conversations with students. Like in the first one, you got a 3, in the second one, you got a 4. Look at that. You grew
Mhm.
1 whole point in your writing or your speaking in just 2.5 months. Imagine
Mhm.
what you can do between now and the end of the semester. So that's part of it too.
Language proficiency isn't a single moment, it's a journey.
At Avant, we support the entire proficiency cycle, from learning to assessing real world language use to certifying skills that open doors beyond the classroom. Our connected platform gives educators clear data, less guesswork, and meaningful ways to recognize what learners can truly do with language.
If you're looking for a better way to support growth, from first practice to verified proficiency, visit avantlanguage.com.
Avant, the language proficiency company. It's very empowering. And I like how you said empowering. So often I feel that assessments can be defeating for students if the data isn't being used in a way that helps to then shape instruction. But it sounds like you're taking data and then you're putting it in the hands of the students, and with your knowledge of proficiency and the different levels, you're using that to teach into,
The next
the
level.
next
Correct.
level. And so
Yes.
that therefore those results become empowering. And that to me, that's the whole key of making an assessment an empowering tool for students rather than something that could be defeating. Can you speak at all to how that might work towards the Seal of Biliteracy then with your students?
Before I do that, I just had one more comment on something you
Absolutely.
mentioned about, having the assessment help you with the instruction.
Hmm.
It's I do believe in, it's not always sustainable to be so flexible and so dynamic all the time, but those types of results, those early results help you become somewhat flexible. So I'll give you an example.
Oh, yeah.
This year, as I was teaching Spanish 1 in the fall, I noticed my students were getting to that 4 in writing pretty
Hmm.
fast. And I was pleasantly surprised because it's not typical in level 1 to get so quickly to that 4. But I used that information then in the last couple of units in the curriculum to actually create a new journal entry mentor text. So when I do journal entries with my students, I give them like, this is what a novice answer looks like. This is what an intermediate low answer looks like to this prompt and so on. So now that I knew that most of them were intermediate low, I said I added on intermediate mid and intermediate high columns to those mentor texts. And I said, okay, push yourself. Where do you want to be today with this journal entry? And so that's a change that I wouldn't have anticipated at the beginning of the term before the learners even got there. But it's a change where it allowed me to raise the expectation for the students because they had already reached a certain point at a certain point. So to go on with your question about the seal by literacy, the seal by literacy is very attainable. It's very attainable. I feel it's attainable to all students so long as they stay in the program all 4 years into the AP. And
Hmm.
many, many, many of our students get the seal well before AP. But,
Really?
there are students that are have a slower rate of learning. People have differences in the way that they acquire language. This is natural. If you look
Hmm.
at all the world's population, how they learn, people have differences.
Hmm.
So the seal by literacy, in my opinion, is very attainable for 100% of students so long as they stay in the whole program. And this is something that I've started to kind of say more now with my marketing around the seal. The seal by literacy is not the end. It is only the beginning
Hmm.
because we have,
I just got a
yeah,
chill. I
we
really
got to
did
pause
get a
there.
chill when you said that. Say it again. Ooh, say it
Okay, I'll
again.
say it again. The seal, I'm going to say it with my hands. The
Yes.
seal by literacy is not the end. It is only the beginning. If we know the actual levels of proficiency and that beautiful pyramid that they give us, the
Hmm.
seal by literacy is like here.
Hmm.
Really, to have full professional ability in the language, to be fully able to integrate into that culture and have that cultural insight, you need to reach those advanced levels.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to tell that to students now because a lot of them have gotten this idea, and it's probably my fault in some way, shape, or form. They're confused that once they get the seal, they're done. The
Yeah.
seal of biliteracy is not the end, it is only the beginning.
Oh.
I love
Well, and I
that.
just that's so powerful in so many ways, even just metaphorically. You brought it directly back to language teaching, but for me, I took it as like it's only the beginning of your life. It's only the beginning of your dreams. It's only the beginning of your future, of what you could possibly do in the world, of the changes we could make. I mean, that what you said is so powerful to me in so many ways, and you took it directly back to proficiency, which just speaks to me of how deeply, steeped and powerfully you are a teacher of proficiency. Was there more you wanted to say about the seal?
Uh, I'm not sure.
Well, because
Maybe
I
we
have I
keep
have
talking.
another
We keep
well, I have
talking. Yes.
another question that I would love to kind of, if you don't mind me circling back to something that you said earlier about your journey.
Hmm.
So one of my biggest passions is literacy, and particularly multi-literacies, multilingualism, bilingualism, biliteracy. And I was listening to your journey as a language learner yourself, being a multilingual learner, and how much you reflecting on your own experience of becoming fluent in English then made you so much of a stronger language teacher yourself. And so you mentioned the two things. You mentioned watching a lot of TV and reading a lot of books, and books
Yes.
that were at the right level.
Yes.
So, what that made me wonder was how important is it for all of our multilingual learners, whether they're in a language class or not, who are here trying to learn English, how important it would be if their teachers all across the country had a deeper understanding of proficiency or had an experience themselves of learning a second language, because so many of our American teachers don't know multilingual.
Yes, that's right.
And I guess
Not
my
yet.
question is, so much of the studies have been done on monolingual students, but look at the power that you're doing as a multilingual person yourself. So my question is, what are the possibilities? Where do literacy and proficiency specifically, where do you see those intersecting?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I knew we were going to get into this topic. It's really one of my favorite topics during this podcast.
Oh, me too.
Yes, yes. So, I mean, I believe the studies and the research is out there, and I'm not going to quote them because I don't know them by memory. But the studies and the research indicate that more highly literate you are in your own first language,
Mhm,
the easier and faster you'll be able to acquire a second language.
mhm,
Like it's night and day. I mean, I look at my students' data in English, and then they come
mhm,
into like a level one class, and I can see, oh, wow, you're very literate in your own language. Spanish or French or whatever is going to be a breeze. You're going to pick it
mhm,
up so fast
mhm.
because you have more access. And so I think what's really helpful, obviously, it would be amazing if every single teacher learned another language just to experience that themselves. But
Hmm.
what I think would be even more helpful beyond that would be for teachers to understand the power of fostering native language, first language literacies while also adding on English literacies. I think that if teachers understood just how important the students' ability to read in their own language and keep working on that, that's why all these DLI programs are doing really great. I think that would go a really long way. And I don't have information about whether they do or don't. I'm just saying it
They
would be
do.
very powerful for them to understand how important it is. And I don't know, I don't know if there are still programs out there that are like subtractive bilingualism where they try to, diminish the student's language or take it away or replace it with English, but that is really, really harmful.
Well, I mean, not to be ugly or too political, but I mean, I would kind of argue that our entire American education system is built around that
Sure,
subtractive.
sure,
I mean,
because
really, it's a
yes, I hear
monolingual
you.
system. I mean, it is a monolingual
Yeah,
system that is designed to teach English, and
yeah,
world language is an option. It's not required really. In most places, it's simply an option to learn a second language. And as you just said, wouldn't it be important if we were fostering the first language of our students that have come from other places? But it's not happening everywhere, and it's not certainly not required. I
yes,
would,
that's
and
right.
while we're not technically forcing students to lose their first language like it was done in the past to like
It's
the Native
happening,
American
right?
tribes, it's happening
Yes,
by the fact that they're not being fostered everywhere, and it's not. And so it's kind of the by not doing it, we're allowing it to disappear by not
yes.
preserving it and encouraging it. So I think I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know. What do you
Yeah,
guys
I
think?
mean, I completely agree with you. I just don't want to be like, spewing judgment when I haven't been in those schools or I haven't been in those places, right? So I totally agree with you. I mean, it is English is the language of power. I do know even in well-meaning DLI programs, it can become subtractive bilingualism depending on how it's done, right?
Yeah.
But I think we're seeing in the research more and more how important it is to continue to nurture the home language
Mhm.
and nurture those literacy skills because they do. I
Mhm.
mean, literacy, we know literacy transfers. Having come back to my own experience from a very highly literate background in Cuba with my family. I mean, my mom was a librarian and my dad was a professor. You
Uh-huh.
don't get any
Yeah.
more literate than that,
Right.
right? We had lots of books in our home growing up, lots of books. We may not have had food, but we had books.
That's
Yeah.
right. Food for the mind and food for the soul.
So then,
Right.
like,
So,
my question with that then is, how do we promote that? How does a
Mhm.
teacher bring in that first language of the students if they don't speak that? If they don't have necessarily the access to really enforce that, especially for students that come, I've had students that are
yeah.
heritage learners of another language, but they come without that literacy from their first language and don't
Yes.
necessarily have that at home either.
Well, we need to support the homes.
Right.
The parents. We need to educate the parents too, because not all parents, a lot of the times, because of the discrimination that families face in society, they're like, no, I want my kid to learn English. I want my kid to learn English. And
Mhm.
so, if we help all parents understand that by nurturing the home language at home, continuing to practice it, continuing to speaking, help provide materials to the school libraries or to those, classroom libraries in those languages. I think, those connections, the triangle, the parent, the school, the child, I think will really go a long way. And I
Agree.
think
Yeah.
we need better materials in all, like school libraries should represent the languages that their students speak. There should
Absolutely.
be like the French corner or the whatever Arabic corner. I don't know, but keep on reading, keep on learning because it's going to transfer. It's all going to
Mhm.
transfer to all the languages.
Mhm.
Absolutely, and that would lead me to ask about kind of multimodal digital, AI tools that are available now, because I would wonder, I don't know what your school district's take is on the use of AI in the classroom or in the district at this point. I'm curious about that because in my experience across the country doing professional development, I'm seeing all different levels of integration. And where I most recently taught,
Mm,
we're just beginning to integrate AI tools in the classroom. And so
yeah.
I heard you say that language is access, and I've heard multiple other guests that we've had say language is access. And so I'm curious, would you agree that AI tools are also potentially access for those kids and those home languages? Like, what do you think about that?
I absolutely agree. And I'm not knowledgeable enough yet in what AI tools are out there to help foster language acquisition, to help
Hmm.
provide reading, to help provide those videos and different
Hmm.
things that kids need, that incredible input in all different languages. I know they're out there, but I haven't done my research. In terms of Coronado District, we are exploring right now. We're looking at a
Hmm.
few tools to integrate. But I think that the question of access is always going to come down to money. Are those AI tools being offered free of charge to every single school and every single child? Or will certain districts be able to purchase the, whatever it's called, subscription fees? And that's, I mean, call me a pessimist, but that's another layer also of inequity. Who
Uh-huh.
is going to have access to these AI tools and how are they going to work? But absolutely, I think AI can be a very powerful way to bring access to more students in their own language to help them work on their literacies.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
And also that idea of digital tools, you were raised with television shows. Now we have so much at our fingertips with YouTube, with other
Sure.
platforms, with Instagram Reels, what have you, to really expand upon that. Do you use any of those types of tools with your students to expand beyond? Because I've heard you talk about you do a lot of reading and writing. What does that look like? What tools do you use to kind of bring in those multimodal opportunities for your students?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I bring in videos, audios, podcasts from all over. From YouTube, we have like news in slow Spanish, news in slow French. We have subscriptions to that. We also have Edu Novela. I don't know if you're
Mhm.
familiar with that,
I've heard
which
of
are
it. I
the
don't.
really well done, like, these shows that have many different episodes and there are exercises and things aligned to them. And one of my favorite things actually is just getting on Disney and switching the language. So, but right now we're actually watching in my Spanish one class. We're watching the telenovela Return to Las Sabinas, which is on Disney Plus, and what we do is I downloaded. There's this it's a Chrome extension which allows for double subtitles.
Oh,
So
cool.
level one class, Spanish subtitles on top, English on the bottom. That way, if they're not quite sure what a word means, they can quickly glance at the English and try to infer which word in English means that word in Spanish. So I try to do the double subtitles and we watch that, once a week. We'll watch 20 minutes of it just to have that experience of enjoying media in a different language, trying to understand. So I do try to bring that in and I tell them, watch Netflix, watch Disney Plus, switch the language to your favorite shows and watch it with the subtitles, read along and try to tell them that as well.
I love that, and you're pulling tools that were helpful for you as a learner. What does this look like on a bigger scale? Because I know you lead professional development and support other teachers. What is that looking like for you? We've talked kind of about bringing that proficiency and literacy in the heart of your classroom. What do you feel like are the top priorities that you're bringing to your peers or those that you lead in your district?
So the top two things, and we have a lot of strengths as a department. We honestly we have great results.
Mhm.
The top two things that I feel I'm bringing in as what we need are more interpersonal communication in the classroom. That's
Uh-huh.
authentic, not like I memorized this dialogue and now I'm spitting it back, right?
Mhm.
So more interpersonal, authentic communication, as described earlier in the episode when I talked about like, we just read this thing, we have this question, let's think about it, let's talk on the spot. So that's one. And the other one, the big one, is the assessment piece. We are definitely working on aligning assessments, and that is a process for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Big
What
process.
what does that look like? What does that process even look like for those who haven't thought of how to do that or where to begin?
Well, in the French department, over the past 4 to 5 years, we developed a fully project-based curriculum that is also, proficiency-based, all of that, all the bases, all the literacy-based, all the base, all the base.
Yes, you covered all the
And
bases.
we have covered all our bases. I think. I think we've done a great job if I do pat myself on the back.
You deserve it.
And when we started using the Avant test, we shifted to more of these like proficiency checks that I also described earlier. So I feel like in the French department, we have made significant leaps in the last 5 years to
Mhm.
kind of build a program that we feel is fully aligned vertically from level one. So from the first day of level one to the last day of AP, students have a similar experience, and they have an experience where they're doing projects, they're reading texts, they're watching videos, and they're talking about those things, and then they'll be successful. Right? That's the whole
Yeah.
point.
And
That's the whole point.
did you set those up based on the like proficiency descriptors, like the proficiency levels as they would grow through each level? When you say articulated, is that what you mean?
I mean, the approach to project-based learning, the thematic approach is very similar. We took the
Mhm.
AP themes, and at every year we said, okay, what does science and technology look like in level one? And so then that became our sub-theme. Okay, what does science and technology look in level two, and so on. And then in terms of the proficiency ranges themselves, we
Mhm.
actually decided that after our first year or our first semester using the stamp, once we got some local data to see how our kids were actually performing,
Uh-huh.
then we sort of said, okay, by the end of level one, this is where they should be. And it's an average, obviously. Some kids will go
Right.
beyond, some will be just below.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
happens.
Right.
And by the end of level two, this is what we want to see. By the end of level three, and so on. So we did that based on the data. Um, and so that's one aspect. With the Spanish department, we are in process. We are in process of aligning those assessments, and we're still in process of, discussing the merits of different types of assessments.
Mhm.
Mm. I love that you're making those data-driven, data-informed
Yeah.
decisions,
So powerful.
not just for goal setting for your students, but for your
Mhm.
curriculum at large. How
Yeah.
powerful to go from here's the standards, here's the goals, here's what it looks like in action, and here's where we're succeeding and where we're falling short. Here's where we need to be and where we're not. Here's where we are, and let's celebrate it and continue doing whatever's working and getting us there. So, what do those conversations look like as a department? Do you continue to look at the data and have those every year, or have you had to tweak things based on it?
So we're fortunate to have a Department of Defense grant for world languages that's actually ending this year that
Mhm.
has provided that professional learning support. And we're hoping that it can continue beyond the life of the grant. But it has looked like over the last, I don't know, 4 years or so, we've had about, I would say, like 8 sessions of professional development that I've specifically put together based on what we needed. I would say the first two or three were kind of like I was just putting things together because I wasn't really sure what the goal was.
Mhm.
So, the first two or three were like, everybody come and present a best practice or come and present an
Mhm.
idea. We also did actual proficiency levels in one of those, like where I showed the famous video of the guy saying like, me gusta comer enchiladas. You know what I'm talking about? And we had fun trying to guess what level is that. Obviously, that was
Yeah.
very easy
Uh-huh.
just to understand the levels a little bit. After that, we are fortunate to work with a San Diego County Office of Education evaluator who evaluates the progress on the grant. So our evaluator said, this is what you guys should work on. So she told us to work
Mm.
on making sure to integrate authentic interpersonal communication in the classroom. So then the next few sessions were about that. I don't know if it was 3 or 4 sessions on that. We brought in, stuff from Common Ground, the book by
Yeah, great
Florencia
book.
Henshaw.
That's a great book.
We brought in stuff from the California Framework.
Mhm.
We brought in examples from our own practice. The teacher sent me, this is an example of a authentic speaking activity I do in this unit. And We had screenshots and everything so everybody could kind of see what it looks like. We had a lot of examples of those. We also had a session on like just teacher moves within instruction and assessments related to speaking. For each time, there was usually time to collaborate and create something new. So it wasn't just like, here's some information, go do it on your own time. The teachers actually got time to practice and hopefully integrate it in an upcoming lesson very soon. And then the last few sessions, and again, it's still ongoing, have been, did a couple of sessions around assessment, and we are going to continue those conversations moving into the future. But this year, we've also done some AI stuff too. So it's a little bit of a hodgepodge.
Want to hear more about that in our next conversation with you.
Yeah. It looks like it's time to wrap up. So I just want to know from this conversation, you have got so many great ideas. And really, I love how you've taken your own journey as a learner into your work as an educator. Do you have anything that kind of a last idea of what you would want our listeners to take away from this time with you if they were thinking about how to carry forward their own practice as educators, as leaders, as parents, as people about multilingualism and multiliteracy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the message that I'd like to leave everyone with, whether you're a student or a teacher listening to this podcast, is to really think about this idea that there is no limit, there is no ceiling to what you can learn and what you can accomplish. And sometimes inadvertently, so we impose limits on our learners because we don't realize how powerful their minds really are.
That was beautiful. Very well said. And I agree 100%. Thank you so much, Maylén, for joining us and for being with us today and sharing your words of wisdom and your beautiful journey and the hard work that you and your teachers in your district are doing. So, to our listeners, if you were intrigued by something in this episode and want to add to this conversation, comment below. Remember to like, subscribe, and share this podcast in your networks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Yes, you too.
All opinions expressed in this podcast and the comments are solely those of the individual and not necessarily those of Avant.